Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Monday, May the 6th. And welcome to our commentary. Some of our friends in Houston are getting a lot of rain. So I hope that if you live in that part of the state, that you're taking good care of yourself. But they're getting a tremendous amount of rain down I-45 from here in North Texas. I want to just give you a little heads up. Today, Monday afternoon, we'll be recording our weekly podcast with our friend Bill Katz, the editor of Urgent Agenda. We call it the Week in Review. We look back at some of the stories of the last week and some of the stuff on the front pages. That's available on Blog Talk Radio, so it's only a podcast, but we'll put it up on Twitter as well as my blog. It's always an interesting chat, and especially now because Bill is in New York. And Bill also has a family history with Columbia University. So he's looking at what's happening in Columbia with a great deal of personal interest as well. Just a quick mention, yesterday being the May 5th or Cinco de Mayo, as we like to say in this area, I didn't get into the details, and I wanted to get into it now because it's a fascinating holiday, the way we celebrate Cinco de Mayo here in Texas and the way they celebrate it in Mexico. It's like completely different. The 5th of May in Mexico, or Cinco de Mayo in Spanish, is actually the celebration of a battle called the Battle of Puebla, a battle that happened in 1862 when the French army and the Mexican army met on a battlefield near the city of Puebla, which is about 100 miles south of Mexico City. By the way, it's a beautiful city. I've been to it a couple of times. One of the most beautiful cities in Mexico. They have these beautiful churches, just an absolutely beautiful city. It's a large city. I think they have over 2 million people. But anyway, it was in 1862 that they had that battle known in Mexico as the Battle of Puebla. And it didn't turn out real well for the Mexican army, but it was such a they put up such a fight against a much better army, the French army, that it went down in history as one of those moments that Mexico, remembers the patriotism of the soldiers that day. So that's May 5th in Mexico. The Battle of Puebla, 1862. That date, of course, is interesting because that was about the time of the Civil War here in the United States. So that's in Mexico, May 5th, 1862. Then we come up here, Cinco de Mayo, or May 5th, and it's a completely different holiday. It has nothing to do with the Battle of Puebla. And I don't know exactly how it came together, but friends here in Texas who have lived here forever tell me that it became sort of a celebration of Mexican heritage. That's kind of what it was all about. So, if, for example, in our area, Cinco de Mayo is a wonderful day. I mean, the Mexican restaurants put on a tremendous show, and there are parades and there are things that go on that are absolutely wonderful to obviously remember the Mexican heritage in our area. So, Cinco de Mayo up here and the Battle of Puebla in Mexico, two entirely different celebrations. They simply remember a battle down there. And we have turned Cinco de Mayo up here into Mexican Heritage Day, sort of like Columbus Day is Italian Heritage Day in many of the cities in the Northeast that had large Italian populations. So, I've written several posts about this, of how, many times when you're talking to Mexicans, they're like looking at you saying, what are you celebrating Cinco de Mayo? What is that all about? And they don't really get it. And of course, up here, we don't understand that it's a battle down there. So it's just a fascinating day. I have been on both sides of the border on this day. I was in Mexico for a couple of years on May 5th. And again, they just celebrate a battle, much like we would celebrate Gettysburg or something like that up here. And then up here, of course, it seems like every year it gets bigger and bigger and bigger as we celebrate Mexican heritage, not just here in Texas, but of course in the Southwest and some of the other states. Even in Miami, somebody was telling me that even in Miami they celebrate Cinco de Mayo, which is interesting, of course, because there's no big Mexican connection there. But it's become, as I say, Mexican heritage and a good day to enjoy some of that wonderful Mexican food that we like so much. So happy Cinco de Mayo to all of my Mexican friends. And I don't know, we didn't eat Mexican food yesterday, but we could see some of the signs around town that a lot of people were having a great time on. Well, one of the things that we're going to get into later today with my friend Bill Katz, the editor of Urgent Agenda, when we look at our podcast that we're going to do in a few hours, one of the things that we're going to be talking about, it's these cancellations of graduations. Columbia University, and as I mentioned, Bill has a connection to Columbia University. They have canceled their graduation, which is, I think, to me, almost unthinkable that you would do that to the parents and to the students. You know, I remember we went through the graduations of our sons, whether it's high school or the university, and it's such a magical moment in a family's life. It's such an amazing moment when you get to see your son graduating, or your daughter, whatever it may be, when they get the diploma, and then you take pictures with them later. I remember when our sons graduated, that even my parents got to go to the graduation. And when one of our sons graduated from law school, former President Bush was the speaker. And what a tremendous honor that was, to be, to know that President Bush, this is George W. Bush, spoke at the SMU graduation. So, and of course, you have to understand that his wife, Laura, is on the board of directors, and also at SMU is where George W. Bush, President George W. Bush, has his library. So it was natural for him to be there. But what a great moment that was for me and our family and our sons. And, in the case of Columbia, it just went out the window because they couldn't restrain these people who decide that they're more important than anybody else. We saw this in Michigan a couple of days ago. They had a graduation and they jump in and they, interfere and interrupt. And it's like, not only are these people super rude, but they're out of control. They're out of control. And you need administrators who are willing to look at them and say, no, we're not putting up with this. We're not putting up with this. And we're going to arrest you. And then, of course, you need judges who will actually put them in jail, not release them the next day, as apparently happened in New York. But what a terrible thing to do to so many young people who've worked so hard to get a degree. I know this from my own personal graduation, but watching our sons graduate and all the work that goes into a graduation, what a terrible shame when it all goes out the window because a college or college administrators do not have the strength to act and support the thousands whose students who have nothing to do with these marches, but yet have to be impacted by these marches. I think they've canceled USC as well, the ceremony at USC. What a terrible thing. I mean, such a great school, Columbia, such a great school, and the students are not going to be able to graduate. I mean, look, I think the president of Columbia should resign in disgrace. She should submit a resignation and say, I'm done. I have failed. Have somebody else run this place because I have failed. Well, I have a post over at the American Thinker today. You may want to check it out Monday morning over at the American Thinker, talking about Catholics. Catholics are moving in the direction of Donald Trump. That appears to be the case, and not just Catholics, but a lot of other groups. It seems like what you're watching in this election is everything seems to be shifting toward Trump, in Trump's direction. Now, that doesn't mean that it's going to be that way in November, but it probably will if these trends continue. And a lot of it has to do with this general dissatisfaction that we're seeing in the country, whether it's the border, whether it's the energy policy, whether it's the universities, whether it's foreign policy. And we're going to get into a little bit of that with Bill later today when we talk about, the situation with Israel and the United States. But I mean, I just think there's a sense in the country that things are not working, that things need to change. And honestly, the last time that I saw that kind of a mood in the country, you got to go back to the summer of 1980, when I think everybody concluded that President Carter was simply not up to the job. Now, I have to tell you one thing, comparing President Carter to President Biden. Carter, at least I thought, was trying. I thought he was trying. He failed, but he was trying. I think in the case of President Biden, I'm not even sure if he knows what's going on. I mean, he seems so aloof and so detached from reality. I don't even know if he knows, honestly, what's going on. That speech that he gave a couple of days ago about the college campuses, I mean, come on, is that all you're going to do? I mean, it's just absolutely insane. One quick thing here before we wrap up. I have a post coming out Tuesday morning about the teachers union in Chicago. And if you have not seen this, you got to check it out. The teachers union apparently came out with their demands for salary and working conditions. And it's just absolutely insane. It's absolutely insane. If you're a teacher in Chicago and you look at the lousy academic achievements of the students there, where such a huge percentage of them cannot even read and write at the level they're graduating. I mean, you ought to consider yourself lucky if you have a job as a teacher in Chicago. You should not even demand an increase. You should demand that maybe your union leadership resigns. But what a disaster, Chicago and the public schools, and now the city, the teachers union making all kinds of demands about more money and more conditions. I mean, just absolutely crazy. Well, let me leave you today with a happy birthday greeting. Happy number 93 to Willie Mays. Willie Mays, one of the all-time greatest baseball players. He came up with the Giants, played almost all his career with the Giants. He played one last year with the Mets in New York, but the whole career was with the Giants. First, of course, in New York, and his biggest years came with the Giants in San Francisco. But one of the most, just one of the greatest players to watch. I had the opportunity to catch up with him a little bit later because most of his great years we were not living in the United States, so I couldn't watch him. And I did watch him a lot on television in the late 60s. But I did finally see Willie Mays in person, and that was in New York in 1972. I was in New York with a bunch of friends. We were just doing just a tour of New York. And my brother, my two friends, and I, we went to what was then called Shea Stadium, and we saw him play with the Mets. It was, again, he was an aging veteran. He was nowhere the Willie Mays, of course, who made so much fame. But just to watch him, just to say that I had a chance to watch Willie Mays hit or even play center field was one of the greatest moments in my baseball life, I should say. My love for baseball. Willie Mays, happy number 93, was born in Alabama. On this day in 1933. He turns 91. What an amazing player he was. All you have to do is watch these videos that they show that catch that he made against the Indians in 1954, 4 home runs one time that he hit. I mean, just one of the best, one of the all-time greatest. Willie Mays. So happy number 93. I hope he's having a good day on his 93rd birthday. He deserves it. Great player. Wonderful man. Willie Mays. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.